Hey, it's Brian.
And hey, it's Murdoch. Welcome to Rock and Roll Bedtime Stories.
You get involved with the show at wearethestoryguys@gmail.com like Kirk did. He writes the show from Egleston, Virginia. I will be honest, I Googled Egleston, Virginia, because I was curious.
What about it?
They used to be like a railway.
Yeah.
On both sides. And then when the rails went away, I think now it's just a rustic, smaller place to live.
Oh.
But it sounds like it has a great restaurant. The main there was like they took this one old building and turned it into a great restaurant. Kirk, I'm sorry. I would love to be corrected, or if you want to tell us more about Egleston, I'm very curious about it.
So just send us a note and tell us, since we're where the L&N the railroad doesn't run here either.
So let's actually get to what Kirk was asking us instead of what we want to ask Kirk. That is, what's up with not nice rock stars? It's an interesting, funny question. There are many pro musicians who people say are just not nice. For instance, I think I read something about Zakk Wylde not being nice.
Yeah.
What led to this reputation?
Yeah. I seem to have heard that a little bit here and there.
Do you think it's just because he's a brusque-looking fella? Like, brusque is not a word that you would describe somebody, but, he looks rough and tumble.
I don't know if you're a big Hanna-Barbera guy, but he looks like Captain Caveman, but taller. He does. But
hey, hold on. Do you know Hanna-Barbera make Jesus cartoons?
Yes.
Oh, I'm a big Hanna-Barbera guy because of that reason. Lots of those Jesus cartoons.
So I saw I forgot to Google it, but I saw Zakk a few years ago, pre-pandemic, and it was like,
oh, really?
Guitar Guys.
I don't remember this.
It was at the Palace Theater.
Really?
And I took.
Where was I? Why was I not invited?
A friend of mine got tickets and asked me to go, and then a very morose person that doesn't have fun everywhere. And so this is why I was like, is Zakk a jerk? So Zakk's playing, and he starts playing like not just on all the way around the stage. He starts moving around the venue.
Oh,
and that's cool. And he does. Here's where you tell me whether it's cool or not. He doesn't have a 1080 wireless. So he's corded. So my buddy was like, "What a freaking
cool
jerk!" But then I looked around and I was like, "I wonder how many people are so stoked that they're getting to grab the cord because people were helping."
I wonder if that's part of the reason he does it.
Because it's like, it's like kind of crowd surfing, but with my guitar cable.
That's what they call camera gripping in the TV industry.
Yeah.
Something I used to do during college during football games, camera grip, which means you ran behind and held the cord.
Yeah, and my buddy was like, stupid, man. Why doesn't he have a wireless unit? Everybody hates it. Yeah, so anyway, that was my one thing. But maybe it's because of the image, but he also...
Okay.
The gig?
I mean, yeah. So he's built an image for himself. We're going to talk about this as we go, right? It's very calculated. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean he came up with this idea and he has really stretched out this sort of like how he wants to be perceived. Also, I mean, he played guitar for Ozzy, which we're going to talk about, but no one's going to consider a person who plays guitar for Ozzy a kitty cat, probably. No. But there is an event that does go down between Zakk and his fan base nearly 20 years ago now that still haunts his reputation a little bit. He's tried to bury it. His people have tried to bury it. We're going to dig it up today. It has to do with a promise he was part of a promise made to his fan base. The promise of free guitars.
I know, and when free guitars would be wonderful. It's like
don't mess around with people. I mean, and we're going to talk about this too. But when you dig into this, there are all of these comments. People at the time they get very intense about guitars then and now. But I'm saying, like, at the time, the idea of being given a guitar
is like having sex on a cloud and not getting pregnant.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. It's like, wow, I just get a Gibson Les Paul.
Free guitars were it was catnip for this type of person, especially a type of person who really loves Zakk. Because I mean, let's talk a little bit about Zakk,
right? As a guitar player,
guitar player.
And you have mentioned Kitty Cat a couple times. If there was one guitar player that was a Kitty Cat that played with Ozzy, that's Randy.
I was going to say, as I was saying it out loud, I thought Randy Rhoads was a Kitty Cat
with the polka dot flying V. So out of Sabbath, he ends up meeting Sharon, who becomes his manager, and they get Randy, and then Randy has the accident. Randy dies. Brad Gillis from Night Ranger for a minute fills in. for the Diary of the Man Mad tour, and they finish and they do that live, the Ritz, which you can't find that show. It's Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, I think, is the live record. It's all Sabbath covers. And so then after that's Jake E. Lee, who does the 2 records, Bark at the Moon, Ultimate Sin. And then you get Zakk. And yeah, so, but after that, like, Zakk leaves and he does his own thing, and Joe Holmes and Gus G, they're in different times. And then Zakk comes back. Like, it's
right.
Yeah, he has like an open door.
If we want to talk about Ozzy, there is a lot in the back catalog about Ozzy. We've done series of episodes about him. I mean, it's hard not to, right? Yeah. So go check that stuff out. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to power rank that list that you just gave me. If we're going to power rank the guitar players for Ozzy, where does Zakk sit on that list?
Randy is first, Zakk is second, Jack is third, and that's really all you.
So you would put him above Jake?
Yeah, I would. Even though I really was impacted by Jake E. Lee as a kid, which is, I don't think anyone's ever said that out loud as a person, but I just did.
I don't know. People like Jake E. Lee. I don't feel like he has a bad reputation with fans.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't get paid, which was bullshit. And listen, before the advent of the internet, so this is the 80s, so... And we're going to talk about how Zakk shows up in this Ozzy narrative or whatever. I remember reading, and it could have been Hit Parader, Cream, Rip, or whatever the hell I was reading, that like Ozzy had found this like kid guitar player that was like the new Randy Rhoads. That's what I read.
Yeah.
And so when he showed up on the scene, like that was the thing. Like, it's like, oh, he's this really young guy with these great chops.
But he's really tall. Yeah. And one of the things that's really funny, you mentioned Randy being a kitty cat. Randy was really small. Yeah. And I don't know if people know that. So there was this, he would put... He would put Randy on his shoulders. Ozzy would.
Yeah.
And there is in one of these interviews that I read during the research, there is a reference to the fact that at some point Ozzy looks at Zakk and says, well, I'm never going to be able to put him on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there is this acknowledgement of how different they are in terms of size, but how similar they are some in terms of where, the type of influence they were going to be on Ozzy's music. So you'll sometimes hear, and you said how they get connected, right? You'll hear this story that Zakk auditions for Ozzy because of Howard Stern. Because Ozzy goes on Howard Stern in the mid-'80s and says he's going to replace Jake E. Lee. And that's only kind of true. That gets blown out of proportion because, like, when I heard it, I thought it was like, I just heard this on the radio, and then he like ran home and made a tape and sent it in. That's not exactly how it happens. He comes to the gig a little more accidentally, but he does hear about it on Howard Stern.
Yeah, our boy Richard Beanstalk,
friend of the show.
Yeah, interviewed Zakk for Guitar World. This is 2017, and this is a quote from Zakk talking. And like you, I didn't exactly know how he got in the band initially. I thought it was Howard Stern. So this is a quote from Zakk. I remember around the time in '87 hearing Ozzy was on the Howard Stern show. Jake was gone. He was looking for a new guy. And Barb, who was his girlfriend, now wife.
Side note, they've been married, I think, this whole time.
Just 40.
And have 4 kids.
Almost 40 years.
Wild. You don't see that in rock very often.
No, Zakk Wylde. So she said, if you could get a tape to him, and I was like, well, yeah, sure. Well, how am I going to do that?
Yeah, and so he has this band of his own at the time. They're called Xyrus. Now, I read near the end of doing the research, so I didn't put it in our notes, but I was going to ask if you'd ever heard this. I heard that his relationship with Xyrus, even though he was young, was actually contractual, and that the guy who was managing Xyrus tries to get Ozzy and Sharon to buy him out of a contract.
Wow. So like they were paying Zakk.
Was something. And so he was supposed to be like, he was trying to get $60,000 out of them, and they ended up getting 5 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I just ran across that at the end, and I had never heard that, because I think of Xyrus, especially because you read that Xyrus was doing like residencies and stuff, that they in some New Jersey bar, that they were not like a band that had formalized contracts, but maybe they were. So yeah, he's got this band, and he's 19, and a few weeks after hearing about this on Howard Stern, he's loading out from a Saturday night bar gig in Jersey, and this guy who he kind of knows from the local scene walks up to him.
Yeah, and this is from Zakk again. It's a quote from Zakk. I'm loading up my gear, and this guy named Dave Feld comes up to me, and he says, hey, have you ever thought about auditioning for Ozzy? And I'm like, sure, whatever, dude. Do you know the guys from Led Zeppelin too? But he told me if I put together a demo tape and took some pictures, he could get it to this friend of his whose name is Mark Weiss, a photographer, who had just finished doing a shoot with Ozzy.
And so if you don't know anything about Feld, it would be really fun to get distracted. I am going to get distracted by Feld for just a moment. So Feld will go on to work for Atlantic Records, but he's just a guy in the Jersey scene at the time. And I believe timetable-wise, you'll have to help me. I think timetable-wise, this might have happened after this connection with Zakk and Ozzy, but he has this other massive connection into heavy music in the 80s. And that is that he knows the guys in a band in Jersey called Skid Row.
And they don't have a singer.
And he goes to a wedding across the country, and I forget where, but wherever Sebastian was at the time. And Sebastian's in a wedding band. And he calls from the wedding and is like, hey, guys, I found your singer. He's this wedding guy, like in Texas or something. It was like way across the country. And they fly him in.
It's like Back to the Future, that phone call, but on acid. Yeah. I'm at this wedding in California.
It's your cousin.
And I know you New Jersey metal guys need a singer.
So anyway, that's Feld. Not to get too distracted by that, but I feel like it would be rude to not tell that story because it's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, at the time, he's just like a rando scene guy to Zakk. So I don't think Zakk's expectations are super high that anything is going to happen from this. And there's not much to lose. So he makes an audition tape. And this thing, because it's 2024, has gotten loose on the internet. Have you ever heard Zakk Wylde's audition tape for Ozzy?
Yes. And all you have to do, show notes, sure. Or Google Zakk Wylde audition tape. And it is the top result. And holy shit. If it was 1987 and you had heard this, you would have been blown away because... it is so freaking unbelievable.
So it's real metal at first.
Yeah.
And then just to sort of like put salt in wounds or whatever, like whatever it is to like just sort of like be over the top, he pulls out a classical guitar and he plays classical arranged renditions of
Flying High Again
and Mr. Crowley.
Right. So Feld gets this tape to Ozzy. Zakk gets a call at his mom's house from Sharon, and he thinks it's fake, of course, and is sure it's his friend pranking him until a plane ticket shows up.
Can you imagine? You're like, yeah,
no.
Man, you're such an a-hole, and then all of a sudden you open the mail. And so he flies to L.A., and he gets to meet Ozzy face-to-face.
But it's a cattle call, and almost all of Ozzy's guitar stuffs were cattle calls, except, by the way, I do know this, after... Randy died, Brad Gillis said that he went to New York and said that hardly anyone else was there.
Oh.
And he actually made a couple mistakes in the audition, but then they were like hired him like immediately after that. So it's a cattle call. He's not the only one there. They're all in the same hotel. Like all the guys are waiting there.
And Zakk explains this in the interview, how bad he wanted the gig. And he describes being at the hotel and overhearing these guys as they're milling around in the bar and the open places, talking about how they want it because it's going to pay well. And Zakk's reaction is like, dude, I want it because I want to play with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah. Do you know who went 0 and 2 auditioning for Ozzy? And in one instance, he wanted to play for Ozzy. But then secondly, he had a wife and 2 kids, and he had no job. You know who that was? It's George Lynch.
Oh, really?
He lost to Randy, and then he didn't get it when Jakey Lee,
dude.
And so when
2 times, that's not good.
And I remember reading that, and like George Lynch, like he didn't have a lot of cash. And this is pre-Doc and Unchained the Night, like, when the Dream Warriors, all the things. Do you like that? So here's a quote from Zakk. The analogy I always use is they wanted to play for the Yankees, right? Because that's where all the money was, whereas I had every picture of every Yankee on the wall, and I knew what everyone's batting average was.
And I love that. And to that point, in the audition, he actually gets to play with Randy Castillo and Phil Sousa, and they do Suicide Solution, Bark at the Moon, and Crazy Train.
And he gets the gig.
The first record to feature Zakk is '88's No Rest for the Wicked. Do you like that record?
Yeah, and not only do I like that record, I love that record. I don't think that there's a stinker on there, and I might be
I think you're in the minority. I don't think very many people love this record.
Yeah, I don't.
Very many people.
I don't think so either. I think the production's great, and I think a lot of people would disagree me on that too. I feel like it's raw power, like all in the red. Like it feels just everything is overmodulated and everything is hot. And to me, I always thought that Ozzy's records sounded like when people complain about records sounding compressed or whatever. Like none of them sound like No Rest for the Wicked. So yeah, I love that record.
So if you want to get into the details on the making of that record, that Richard Beanstalk article that I mentioned is excellent. It's in the show notes. It's from 2017, I think, Guitar World. And I want to make sure to not get too distracted, given where we're headed, because we need to go another 15 plus years in the future for Mr. Wylde. So
here's Cliff Notes just to get us there. So he plays with Ozzy. He starts a side project named Pride and Glory. And in mid-'90s, he gets asked to join Guns N' Roses, which is weird.
Okay, this could be a whole episode. Like, I was like, this is a real thing when I stumbled across this. 100%. Axl Rose calls him and is like, we're thinking about, adding someone to Slash. It wasn't like he was going to replace Slash. It was both of them would have been in the band.
Yeah, but instead they got Buckethead. So he spins his wheels waiting on something to happen with the band. Ozzy replaces him for touring with Joe Holmes and for a while, and Zakk will parlay his solo recordings he's doing and to fulfill a record label contract into a project he will call Black Label Society, which still exists. And then in the early 2000s, he goes back with Ozzy because the door clearly with Ozzy is always open.
I love watching you work when we talk about bands you love and know really well.
Well, thank you, for real.
Black Sabbath, man. Okay, nicely done. So let's pause here. I want to talk about something besides this band for just a second. I want to talk about our show and how we talk about bands on this show, which it's going to get real meta for a second. There is a larger conversation here about the types of stories that we tell and how they're affected by technology. And in a really broad sense, I sort of feel like there's 3 types of stories that we tell in this arena.
Yeah. On one hand, we have the traditional histories that are researched like something from a middle school history book.
Right.
So really, in most cases, that's anything before 1995, right? When we research those stories, we're depending on past accounts, retellings, and anything that's been saved from that period.
And then you have the stuff that happens since the advent of the internet, where you get this ability to freeze frame portions of the original moment because they may have been involved with like some internet documentation. The good example of this is this recent convo we had about Godsmack and Story of the Year from 2024.
So you get to see message board postings.
Right.
We get to read those to you with their funny usernames from the night and day after it happened.
Yeah, spoiler, there's some of that coming. The third type, though, is Today's Story, which is kind of like that second type, but with a whole different extra layer. And that's a story about the internet, documented on the internet. And we don't get a ton of these types, but you might recall like an example would be like Metallica and Napster when we talked about that story.
Yeah, the internet's a co-star in the conversation today.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
Because it not only enables it, it documents everything in real time.
Okay, so this story captures this very specific period of the internet, similar to the Napster story, where the sharp edges and the lack of real understanding of the effect the internet is going to have is still at play. And it's a tale as old as time, really, though, if you take the internet out of it, because it's really just a scam story. And I hear that the podcast crowd in general tends to like stories about scams and crime.
Yes, crime or stabbing, murdering people.
But this is really about how a scam can be perpetuated on the internet. And it's one of the first times we really see this happen with rock and roll.
And we're taking a step out here to see if there's another niche audience here, because we need to talk about this subject, which is motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
Which we know a lot about.
Well, okay, so this brings us back to Black Label Society, which you mentioned. Black Label Society, this is what Zakk does at the end of the 90s, and it still exists. Has been very successful for him. Did you know that on the Black Label Society Wikipedia page, one of the genres that's listed to describe them is biker metal. Should we talk about what that is?
I just always assume that's just Motorhead, and then everyone is a cousin to Motorhead.
Everyone aping Motorhead is in that category.
Yeah.
So yes, Lemmy gets tagged as being the guy, right, who sort of puts motorcycles and biker culture into rock and roll. He doesn't do it single-handedly. I mean, there is an argument that the term heavy metal actually comes from this Deep Purple song where they reference bikes. But bottom line, we're talking about heavy music that gets imaged and associated with motorcycle culture. And I presume, probably I would assume if you're going to call it biker metal, if you were riding a motorbike, listening to that music would sound good.
Right. But Zakk doesn't own a motorcycle, so we're going to just...
I hear he doesn't ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
This is okay. I feel like what's going to happen, too, on this episode, I'm just going to say, because we're going to poke a little bit at Zakk, because of just the nature of what this is, right, about whether or not he's a jerk. I feel like we're going to get some Zakk defenders, and that's fine. We're the storyguys@gmail.com. We're not here to talk shit about Zakk Wylde at all.
We got a question, and here's a story.
Right.
And maybe the story is...
So if you have good evidence that Zakk Wylde does ride motorcycles and he's a big biker guy, I'm not trying to disparage him. Feel free to send us that evidence and let us know about that, okay? But this goes back to what you alluded to about how Black Label happens, which is it's originally going to be a solo record, and then he decides to turn it into a band. So he knows that from working with Ozzy Osbourne, iconography is very important to selling your music.
Yeah, and this is from an interview with Nick Cantonese,
I think,
who plays guitar in Black Label Society. Zakk reads a lot of books, and it's something that interests him. You know, he was reading Sonny Barger's, the Hells Angels founder's book, when he came up with that idea, and we'll reference Sonny when we talk about Altamont really soon, because he's the central person of the entire story.
Yes, he is. Okay, so the idea he's referring to here is how they decide to merchandise and image Black Label Society. The band logo and the T-shirts and jackets and other things. And this is basically what they decide to do is they make all the merch look like the quote-unquote colors of a motorcycle club.
Right. This benefits them in that it automatically gets them associated with a logo, and it backfires because other people thinks that it's bullshit.
Well, we talked about
associated with any of that.
This is true. We talked about how powerful merch is when we talked about the Misfits, right? And how a lot of people know the logo and don't know the band for the Misfits. I feel like it's to a lesser extent, but there's a little bit of that with Black Label. Like, I knew the Black Label look long before I'd ever heard the music or knew or understood the Zakk Wylde and Ozzy connection.
Sure. Me too.
But, and this is beyond the scope of our story today, it turns out, I watched The Bike Riders, that movie. I can sort of see how this might happen. It turns out the serious motorcycle clubs really do not like it when people who are not motorcycle clubs pretend to be in motorcycle clubs.
No. It's weird how it backfires. You can dig in the show notes and find several stories of shows getting canceled and statements getting made because motorcycle clubs were offended by the merch. Real thing that happened. Also, I found a Q&A from the fan club that was like explaining that they weren't an actual motorcycle club. It was like, listen, there are no regional representations and chapters. And they were like, really? Because they tried to make the fan club kind of like a motorcycle club, but without the motorcycles. It was a whole thing. But there were motorcycles.
Here. We're mentioning it not because of that side story about motorcycle clubs getting mad. We're mentioning it because the story centers around 1/18 sized motorcycles that were modeled after Zakk's guitars.
They're die-cast. They're toys.
Well, I would be careful calling them toys again. There might be people who take a little bit of offense to that, but yeah, essentially, they're toys.
You can't get on top of one and ride it like it's a hog down to the bar.
Name of your sex tape.
Yeah. Wow, this is interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so his gear becomes part of this story a little bit. And I will say that this is another thing about telling guitar stories, is that there is a certain audience member who knows way more about the particulars of guitar than me. I know you know more about the particulars of guitars than me. But there is a particular person who really enjoys Zakk because of some of the innovations he's made actually in gear. There are full articles that you could just, if you just Google Zakk Wylde's rig, Like by tour, you can pull up breakdowns of like what he's playing, what pedals he's using, what guitars he's using.
He's selling guitars right now that he's playing with Pantera. So he's doing that thing that, like, you know, everybody, they play the gig, you buy the guitar.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the company that is making these toys.
Right. They're called 357 Customs.
I will admit, I learned a lot about terminology and what I guess if a company is called Customs, you know that they're typically involved with motorcycles. That was something I wasn't sure of. Also, chopper. A chopper is a motorcycle. That is correct. Okay.
I am really surprised you did not know that terminology.
I'd heard it, but I get confused because I've watched a lot of 1980s war movies, and choppers are helicopters. Get in the chopper. He's not talking about a motorcycle.
Well, no, but don't they say it in Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Don't they?
I don't know. Why do you expect me? That's going to be the thing that brings me back to Earth, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
It should.
Okay.
My bike.
This is where the internet of all of this comes into play. The story happens on the internet, and as we've learned in the research, portions of it can be taken off the internet, meaning that this website and this company, 357 Customs, clearly does not exist anymore. So most of what can be parsed out is coming from old conversations on the internet.
Right. And the timetable we have here, this is 2005. So this is 19 years ago. So Zakk is doing both Black Label and is part of Ozzy's team at the same time.
And so let's just lay out the basics, and then we can go backwards and explain what happens. What happened, and then what we think we know now. So you start with what happens.
So here's a message board post that explains it, and I like this just to be able to say it out loud. You'd buy some fucking die-cast dinky car or something like that, and maybe like for $100 or $200, but you got a free Epiphone Zakk Wylde guitar with it.
That is concise.
That's correct. That's what it says.
A little digging found, for me, the offer and the name of the guy who will end up getting associated with and in my opinion, taking the fall for this endeavor. And that's a guy named Chad Dyer.
Right. This was posted on a guitar message board on December 16th of 2005 by a guy whose username is Canyon Carver. He says, I got this note today via email.
And at the top of this email, before you read it, is this statement. The following is an email sent to you by the administrator of the official Black Label Society family. Mm-hmm. And then it says, if you have any problems, blah, 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 here's the email address, and that is chaddyer@zakwylde.com.
Right. Here's the rest of the email copy. I want to read it in the big guy voice, but I won't.
You can.
Because it'll overmodulate our listeners' ears. Due to the incredible success of our diecast Zakk Wylde Chopper gift certificate promotion this past weekend, we're proud to announce that it's back for this coming weekend with very limited quantities.
All in caps.
This offer will end with no notice on this weekend, so get on it quick. Once they are gone, they're gone.
All caps.
The big voice for this is fun. This weekend only with
all
the purchase of one of our 3 new Zakk Wylde diecast gift certificate packs, you'll receive a free
all caps
Epiphone Zakk Wylde signature model Les Paul guitar.
Okay, and stop. Hard stop for just a second. Take a breath, and then read this part. It's in all caps.
This is a real guitar. Not a miniature, not a fake, not a cardboard cutout. This sucker is, all caps, the real Epiphone guitar.
It then spends a lot of time explaining how to enter. And this involves, again, the internet, going to the 357customs.com website. And then it spends a lot of time reassuring people that this is real. Let me read this part. There is no BS, folks, all caps. For the purchase of a gift certificate and diecast chopper, you will receive a $100 357 chopper gift certificate and a Zakk Wylde 357 chopper diecast collectible, and the ultimate item, an Epiphone Zakk Wylde signature model guitar.
And the email is signed Chad.
Yeah. What is your immediate reaction to this email?
Fake news. Fake. It's all fake. Fake news. I mean, it's too unbelievable to believe.
It's so unbelievable, but things to remember, the internet is young, and it is from the official mailing list. And so from what I can tell, both through what still exists of the original reaction and from message boards and conversations about this online after the fact, people get really excited about this.
It's 2005, and people have not been just burnt to the ground and burnt out and shook out as they are being jaded and about everything on the internet now.
Right, yeah.
They really thought there was going to be an Epiphone Les Paul coming to them. There is immediate conversation about this sounding too good to be true, obviously, but, all caps, it is on the official website and in their, all caps, official emails. And so a lot of fans think, regardless of how bad that math is, that Zakk's taking care of them with this deal.
So there's a gentleman around this time. His name is Nathan. He says he is from California. And back in mid-2006, after all of this goes down, he takes it upon himself to document his experience of this whole thing on the website Ripoff Report. Now, I don't know if you're familiar. Do you know Ripoff Report?
I'm very familiar.
Having worked in PR, I do know of it. It is a place where, as you might guess, people go to report when they feel ripped off. So we get a lot of detail from one person's personal journey here, and he seems to do a pretty good job of kind of explaining what happens.
Yeah, he does a good job of the summary, with the setup of the story. And so I'm going to borrow from him here because I want to keep a lot of this straight. So here is what he says happens. Towards the end of 2005, a company called 357 Customs, supposedly they are a manufacturer of custom motorcycles for the stars, began to offer packages in their internet-based store, 357store.com, that included items such as gift certificates, die-cast model choppers, MP4 players, and laptops. And along with each package came a free Zakk Wylde edition Epiphone Les Paul guitar. Different deals were offered at different times through the following months into approximately March of 2006.
Okay, so I had to read this deal over and over to understand what the pitch was. And I'm just reiterating this because if you're listening and you might be, and you're not paying really close attention, you might be totally confused. So the idea was they sell custom motorcycles. So what you are buying in this package is a gift card towards a motorcycle. So you're paying them like $100 and you're getting this thing, plus you're getting this little, it's like, oh, and this cool thing. So why you would do this, even as a startup company or a company that's trying to get some exposure, the motivation is a little weird. And as a person, like, if you're going to buy this thing, but really what you're after is the guitar, you're never in the market for a motorcycle. So why does it benefit, other than letting people know about your motorcycle brand, why does it benefit you to give them $100 towards a motorcycle? The whole thing is just, it's a little strange. She also clarifies something in this that I think is important, which is that initially this is just being pitched to the fan club / website crowd, it looks like. That's who they're going after. But because it sounds like such a good deal, by January, it starts to show up on third-party websites that rank deals. We don't have to get into the specifics of what I'm talking about, but these still exist, where it's like, oh, hey, I heard about this deal, and then people can go in and say, like, whether it was real or not real or whatever, or what, their experience with the person who's providing the contest or the deal. And so it starts showing up there, and so now the scope of this is starting to change because more people are hearing about it.
So back to the ripoff report guy, he decides after some debating to give this a shot. And here's what he writes for all of us to read about later now, 19 years later. The first indication that something was wrong was when I placed my first order, even though it stated right on the website that the guitars would not be shipped until May, but your credit card would not be charged until the items were shipped. He got charged immediately.
And so this is where our friend Chad Dyer steps back into the story. And we should explain. He is the webmaster.
Yeah.
You remember those? Remember that?
Sure.
Were you ever professionally a webmaster?
No, but I worked with two. So imagine working at a place that had two. There were 3 websites and there were 2 webmasters.
Such a funny title, webmaster. Yeah. That doesn't really exist anymore, right? I mean, there's people who are like manage the website, but
I guess
their business cards don't say webmaster.
I remember like taking a form and having to fill out a paper form and saying, I need a link form. Please see this email I'm sending you of these links, and doing that and sending that to the webmaster, who would take like 3 days to put it up.
And so we should explain that he is the webmaster of Zakk's site at the time. So he becomes the de facto communicator with the fan base through all of this.
Yeah.
And the reports are that Chad might have been pretty good at webmastering, not really good at dealing with people.
But remember that the webmaster a lot of time will be the person that handles the mailbox.
And that's not a good fit always.
Right. No. So back to Ripoff Report. So here's the quote. This immediate credit card charging was explained off by ZakkWylde.com's webmaster, Chad Dyer, as it was a default in the commerce package and he didn't know how to change it.
And sure. I mean, maybe that's true. There's also a lot of accounts of the web store just not working very well. Like there were long wait times and transactions were getting completed all the way, etc. But when you start to read account after account of the story from people who went through it, one of the common threads is basically...
He's a Chad.
The Chad was a Chad. As soon as people get anxious about online wait times or about waiting for their guitars in the mail or anything and they start sending in inquiries, he gets real snippy real quick.
Yeah, and you have lots of Chad was an asshole posts on there. And now is probably a good time to reveal something that we learned, thanks Brian, which is Chad was an independent contractor who had multiple webmastering gigs, or at least two. One for Zakk Wylde and one for 357 Customs.
Uh-oh. The plot thickens. Now, that sounds devious when we present it that way. Let me stop, though, and say... Digging deeper, it seems like any deviousness probably goes way beyond Chad. It definitely makes people itchy when they learn this, though, like in real time. Again, part of the internet capturing this and it happening on the internet is that we can really go back and kind of see the fossils of this whole situation, right? So you can see in these posts from 2005 where people are starting to discover the Chad Dyer connection and they're starting to get really irritated, and this is going to make him, as we will see, spoiler alert, a really good fall guy for this entire thing.
Yeah, so the story in a nutshell is that Zakk Wylde's properties promote this deal for 6 months, and then most people never receive anything that they paid for, specifically a guitar.
And when people start calling for heads to roll, guess which one goes first?
Chad,
because he was a Chad.
Yeah, and so this is from Blabbermouth, January 6, 2006.
July 6.
Oh, sorry, July 6, my bad. Chad has this following statement. And boy, this is one, right, to check you later. I have volunteered as the webmaster. Volunteered.
Yeah, so he says he doesn't get paid.
At ZakkWylde.com for the past 2 years, and before that, from 2001 to 2003. I acted as webmaster out of my love for Zakk and everyone in the BLS camp and have never asked for or received payment for my role. Based on recent events related to 357 Customs, 357 Customs promotions, Zakk has requested that I resign as webmaster of ZakkWylde.com in respect of his wishes. I have agreed to resign.
So at first I was like, why is this guy doing this for free? And then I realized that this exact same time period, in 2005, 2006, there was a club in the town that I lived in that needed someone to manage their website. And I just made a deal where I was like, I will manage your website if I can come to all shows for free.
Yeah.
And I totally did that for like a year and saw a lot of great shows for no dinero because I was broke and I knew how to do this, which was at the time the internet was so different and basic websites for small businesses were so different that I was just creating like a graphic in Photoshop for every show and then just like putting it up.
Yeah.
Like there was no real coding or anything that happened there.
Oh, that's funny.
But I did that for a long time. So he goes into more detail, our boy Chad. He says, to clear up some confusion, let me clear my throat. I want to acknowledge that while I was acting as webmaster of ZakkWylde.com, I was hired by 357 Customs to be its webmaster. So he is supposed to be getting paid by 357. He will say later that he doesn't. But so he's volunteering with Zakk. He's getting paid to work for 357. I didn't realize that this would create a conflict of interest, and I didn't clear it with Zakk, his management, or anyone else. When Daniel Bogus asked me to post a promotion, that name is going to be very important. Daniel Bogus, just mentally note that. Asked me to post a promotion for 357 Customs on ZakkWylde.com. I just assumed the promotion was legitimate and would not be a problem. So I posted it, again, without clearing it. I now realize that this was a mistake not to inform Zakk and his management of my dual role and to post the promotion on ZakkWylde.com without authorization.
So Chad does become the fall guy.
Like 100%. This feels like there is a gun to his head. Like if you read that, he is like legally owning every part of this to clear Zakk.
Right.
It's like they have got him in a hostage situation and they're like, we'll let your family go. but you have to say this to the video camera. It's an uncomfortable thing to read, honestly.
But who is it Daniel Bogus? Who's that?
Yeah, okay. So that's the other name. I'm glad you caught that. So this is the guy who at the time is listed everywhere as the CEO of 357 Customs. But when the message board bros start digging, they find out that Dan used to have a different company, a company called InvensaShield.
Yeah, back in 99, 6 or so years before our story begins, Dan had this car accessory related company. And while he owned that company sponsored Brian's favorite sport, a NASCAR team.
Well, we say sponsored a NASCAR team. That's not actually accurate because that would involve giving them money. They never actually gave them any money. They were supposed to, though.
This literally caused the team not to race.
Yeah, so this team that they were sponsoring, and you can go back and find this stuff, where they have to like sideline on races because their sponsor isn't showing up with the check. And you're asking, why does this matter to our story? Well, A, it shows that this guy had previous experience taking people's money, but it matters way more for a different reason, and that is, while he had this sponsorship play going, he created a promotion to get people excited about the partnership. Do you have any guesses on what this promotion might have been?
I might, but I'm going to let everyone think about it for just another 10 or 15 seconds and think about what you might get. And then there's a gift with purchase. So if you know the gift with purchase promotion, this is a press release from July 29th, 1999. NASCAR fan. Oh, do I read it in the voice?
Read the voice, man. You got to be consistent.
NASCAR fans have the opportunity to win an authentic NASCAR Winston Cup Series 91 race car or a brand new 1999 Chevy Monte Carlo. So stop there. Car, not a guitar. Fans can enter by purchasing how do you say that?
InvensaShield.
InvensaShield's gift package. Again,
a gift package? What the hell is that?
Which includes a 1x24 scale die-cast number 91 car and, get this, a $75 gift certificate good to use towards any of their gift certificate crap or sending a postcard with your name, address, and phone number
to InvensaShield.
Yeah.
This guy had run the exact same scam before.
Yeah.
And when it is discovered and starts floating on message boards, people start losing hope. Because, again, I just need to... I know you didn't do all this research, so like you as the listener. So you have to understand that what you're unpacking here in this research is real-time message board posts. And so people are going in... They're waiting on these guitars. They're getting on these message boards at, like, harmonycentral.com, at, like, Guitar World, like iloveguitars.com, like all these different places that have, like, forums from the early 2000s to talk about topics, and they're saying, hey, I signed up for this promotion, and they're finding other people across the country, because this is mostly pre-social media, who are facing this same thing, and this is how they're coming together, right? And so you get to watch people be like, oh no, I just discovered this thing, and they pop it on the message board, and now, before this drops, like, it's the early part of 2006, and people are like, I'm sure the guitar is going to show up. I'm sure the guitar is going to show up. When this shows up, people are like, oh, God, the guitar is not going to show up.
So how does this really end? And in terms of the delivery of what people were promised.
Okay,
so wrap that up.
Now, I just explained the message board situation here. That each one's a little different. And every person's experience is slightly different, right? And I think the guy writing on the Ripoff Report account is probably pretty close to the truth when you look at how this all sort of drops down. Here's what he says, though. He says, basically, end result was, one, a couple of people actually got guitars.
God, crazy.
Now, how many? He says, I don't know. I think, and I think this is probably a pretty good theory, he thinks that they basically went out and bought guitars, like the people perpetuating this, went out and probably bought 3 or 4 guitars, sent them, hoping that they would then end up on these message boards, right? And people would be like, look, I got the guitar, show pictures, everyone would hold on. And he says, if you're really thinking about this, about how you could be really devious. If they keep people thinking the guitars are coming for long enough, they will run out of the period in which they could appeal this with their credit card companies. Because, you have, even then, you would have this period of probably 90 days or something where you could go to your credit card company and be like, I'm getting scammed, bro. And then they would help you out, right? Well, they're saying, like, if we can keep them on the hook, then they'll run out of that and we'll get to keep the money. So whether or not that was their intention or exactly how it happened, I don't know. But he makes a good case there for that. Number 2, a couple of people received cheap die-cast chopper models. Okay,
chopper,
the toys. 3, no one I've heard of received an MP4 player. That came up on certain message boards that in some of versions of this promotion there was an MP4 player involved, which I don't remember those being a thing.
Nope.
Some people received refunds directly from 357, so you did find a lot of folks who went back and said, oh, I don't want to do this. And they did. There were several folks who got their orders canceled and received their money back, so that is good. Some people received refunds from their credit cards after filing for a chargeback. That was a very common thing. And then number 6, most people are still screwed.
The original question we were asked by Kurt was, is Zakk Wylde a jerk? And we have not given the
haven't
jury
really talked about that,
about like enough proof of any of that at all. We're talking about a scenario, like a single scenario that would really probably burn fans, right?
Right.
So the question we want to get to is, what did Zakk do in the midst of all this happening with his website and fans and communication?
And you're totally right in your setup there, which is, this is why so many people get irritated with him and say that he is probably a jerk, because he doesn't seem to do very much during any or all of this, before, during, or after. There is an obligatory lawsuit, but it gets dismissed. He actually files to dismiss it. And there are a few public statements about the situation that he will make, but pretty much all the time, that's all the time he's going to spend on it. And this promotion, again, ran for months, somewhere between 4 to 6, depending on who you're
Which is nuts when you think about how this could have been false and a fraudulent promotion for people. And again, the internet of it all is what makes the story interesting, because some things have survived and some things haven't.
To your point, a lot of things that really document Zakk's affiliation with 357 on the front end have been very hard to find or to verify. There are a lot of references in the aftermath of this on the message boards to Zakk promoting 357 Customs in and around this time, separately from this promotion, that he was just actively like in some sort of relationship with them professionally. The most overt being the suggestion that the motorcycles in the Suicide Messiah video are 357 bikes. And that Daniel Bogus, the president of the company, is playing the part of Zakk Wylde in the music video because Zakk doesn't wear or doesn't ride motorcycles.
Of course.
This is a wild freaking claim. There is no way. I have no idea if that is true or not.
Yeah. And
have you seen the video? I watched the video to see if it looked like a fake guy playing Zakk Wylde.
I watched the video too, and I couldn't tell. But like the claim itself is dubious, but also terrifying. If actually
it's crazy. If it's
executed in truth, it's terrifying.
It seems a little far-fetched, but I really, like I said, can't find any facts or rundown of like who was involved in the video, or like sometimes you can find those on imdb.com where they'll actually be like, here are guest stars in the video. I couldn't find anything like that. I did find one fact that actually makes me think could be possible. And that is that they ran a contest for fans to be in this video. And the reason that I saw mention of that, but the first mention of that I saw was on blacklabelsociety.net, where they have a things you didn't know about Zakk Wylde page. And it's a fan thing, but it's closely associated with the band, and the band acknowledges its existence. And one of these facts, I mean, it was like, dude, I read so many Zakk Wylde facts during the research. It's insane. I went from knowing very little about Zakk Wylde to knowing names of his children. And one of them, I believe, is Sabbath, is actually the name of his child.
I sent you this YouTube clip that I got to put in the show notes, man, of him playing Mississippi Queen War Pigs in that like mini mall parking lot. And it's 93, which means that he's already played to 500,000 people in Russia, but he's playing in the comments. The best comment was, "This is the best Subway ad ever," because there's Subway behind it. Great guitar player. terrible vocalist. The vocals, the PA doesn't sound good.
Oh, my God.
But it's amazing because it's like he's playing, it looks like he's playing in front of 500,000 people, but he's playing in a parking lot.
So in this, speaking of that sort of connection to him, they let all these fans be in the video. And one of the fans that, quote unquote, wins the contest is a porn star. This is something that I learned on his website. And she had posted about it publicly and was like, this is amazing, blah, blah, I won this contest. And it's like, did she win the contest? Is that actually how that would work? I don't know. I say all this only to say this, that if he was really allowing 100 fans into this video and he had this business partnership with this company and they were working on promotions together and he was like, hey, do you want to play me in the video? I could see that happening.
Yeah. But
it is pretty wild. The whole idea is pretty wild. Who knows?
Yeah. The story becomes that 4 months into the scam, Zakk's management was contacted and told about it. Zakk had a manager. His name was Bob Ringe. Yes. We say that. He forwarded all complaints and info about that scam directly to that guy,
Daniel Bogus.
And
he makes a statement online so Bob makes a statement online. We're going to get into some specific dates here, as close as I could get them. Looks like about June 2nd of 2006. So again, this starts, we read that email at the beginning that was the second chance offer to do this, and that was in December 16th of 2005. So we're now a full about 6 months. And beginning of June, Bob says Zakk had no knowledge of this promo. He never authorized it, even though the website and mailing list have been promoting this for this amount of time. And this is days after 357 Custom posts on their site claiming that it's still legit and that they're just behind on ordering.
Right. On June 9th, this is the statement that Zakk makes. Berserkers, which is, by the way, fan group.
It's what you call a Black Label Society fan, right? Yeah.
He's got a Berserker festival coming up in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Because I was like, I want to go see Zakk Wylde with the guitar chord thing. That's what I was thinking. Berserkers, no one is more upset by 357's unscrupulous activities than I am, and I assure you this. I did not know about or approve any of these activities, and this is why I have directed my attorneys to take all steps necessary to address the situation. I realize it has been frustrating for you waiting for information, and as soon as the attorneys report back to me next week, I will update you with a more complete statement. Strength, determination, merciless, forever, Zakk Wylde. I want to steal that. I want to.
You sign all your emails at work like that?
Yeah, merciless, Murdoch.
Okay, so
that's what I want to do.
By June 22, there is June 22nd. There is a more concise statement where he says he has officially filed this lawsuit. And on June 27th, photos show up online, and these are damning, of what is claimed to be 357 Customs home office. And let me just describe them with 2 words: empty and abandoned.
Right. And a fun fact worth noting, nothing referencing in this story is included on Zakk's Wikipedia page. There are screenshots online that show that it was added while it was happening, and then someone got admins to take this down. Almost 20 years later, they have kept it off of there. So there's lots of things that were hard to find or confirm, but...
Guess what I did find?
Guess what Brian did find, and what are they?
I found the toys!
Because they exist.
The die-cast models of Zakk-inspired motorcycles and proof of the die-cast from 1999, sponsored by Invenza Shield. You can buy the Zakk ones on eBay, and let me tell you, they're not cheap.
Yeah,
they cost more than the original package did. You're looking at least probably $150, $200 to get one of these bad boys. And they're modeled, and we didn't really get into this, but they are like, there were 3 or 4 different ones, and they were all supposed to look like a different Zakk guitar. And so you got to pick when you signed up of if you wanted like the camo one, and then you were going to get the camo guitar. Here again, there are some amazing things that are still online in spite of all of this. And one of them is a website that you will find in the show notes, and it is called 357bullseye.blogspot.com. Blogspot's alive and well.
Sure is.
And they have the last post came from I think 2007 or something. The most recent. And it is a picture of a guy they think is Dan Bogus. It's like, we think we found him. And I will say, I looked for Dan Bogus online, couldn't find him. I don't know how you hide But the only thing you can find about this guy are these references in this story for the most part. He has seemed to have disappeared. I have no idea what he's doing now. But this was a guy who looked like, a businessman in 2007 who was probably went to the tanning bed and stuff.
Before that, he was doing gift certificates and die-cast toys with the promise of new cars and guitars.
I'm always interested in the origin story, like how when you get into scamming, how you end up in such a specific scam. Like, why die-cast toys?
Maybe because there's a market for it and dudes like them.
I mean, they do? Someone needs to send me the dude bulletin that it was supposed to inform me that we like die-cast toys.
We should ask producer Troy, because I think he might have some die-cast stuff. He's got... No, I mean,
am I going to get myself in trouble?
No, he's got...
Love you, Troy.
No, Troy's got, like, collectible stuff that would blow your flipping mind, like things he's collected. And so I don't know if he's got die-cast things or stuff like that.
We'll consult him, and we'll consult you. You can get involved. You can let us know. If you were a victim to this scam, if you found this because you're still mad about the scam, I honestly think there will be people who will find this because of that. I would love to hear your story. It's wearethestoryguys@gmail.com, of course. And you can support the show, patreon.com. We got lots of new folks coming to Patreon. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Finding us on YouTube, too. We really appreciate that. Search for us there. And Instagram.com/rockandroll bedtime stories. And until next time, Murdoch, what should people keep doing?
Keep telling stories.
Boom.